Welcome everyone to Pod and Gore, your one-stop shop for everything horror. Now here's your hosts, Justin and Brandon. Take it away, boys.
Welcome, I am Brandon.
And I am Justin.
And welcome to our Lost Boys episode.
For Pod and Gore.
For Pod and Gore. One that I have been excited to get going. Justin, I'm not too sure if he's as excited about it as I am. But
sure, I'm fine. I had never seen it.
Right.
You know, it's one of those that I'd always heard, you know. I took a film class in high school and people were like, oh, Lost Boys and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to ever, you know.
So it's a movie I made you watch, essentially.
Kind of. Like, I probably never would have seen it had you not picked it.
Right.
But that's kind of the fun of this show is that hopefully, you know, I get to watch things that I've never seen. Hopefully I'll pick a couple you've never seen, even though I think you might have seen more than me.
Not necessarily. I mean, we'll see once we get going. There's a few that I need to watch that I have a feeling you might pick. And so, depending on whether or not I'm like, hey, you know, like we talked about, I'm the asshole that hasn't seen A Quiet Place yet. And so,
true.
I need to watch it. I have the ability to watch it now. And I need to just find a way to download it, carve out the time, and do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I know that that's probably one that you might want to do in the future,
Definitely.
potentially,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, we talked about this the other night, but like I'm sure it's good enough to watch it again.
Oh yeah.
Like, but then again, depending on when it gets picked, like, you know, I don't know if it's one of those ones where I'll want to watch it and then be like, oh, hey, next week, guess what? We're doing it again. So,
Well, I think it'll be a nice. I would save it, and whenever I do pick it, whether it's, you know, our next one or 3 months from now.
which I have no idea what.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what your movie will be. You know, to watch when I get back from the honeymoon.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all right. Got my notes pulled up here. So Lost Boys was released on July 31st of 1987. And if you've seen this movie, you know it is very 80s.
Indeed.
Very 80s.
I'm so
we're getting
glad.
we're getting close to the 90s, but it's I mean, just look at the way the boys dressed, you know, like.
I'm so glad that soundtracks are not really a thing anymore.
Fuck you, dude. That was the first CD I ever bought was the Lost Boys soundtrack. I was like,
It's not a bad soundtrack, but it was like, it's just
there's
so.
a few songs on there that were good, but it's like, growing up, the reason why I picked this movie to start out with is because it is one of my childhood horror movies. Like, I grew up watching, like the same with Monster Squad. Even though that's not scary, I will probably be the one to pick that movie because I fucking love that movie.
Fair enough.
And, you know, have you seen it?
No.
I'm going to fucking DDT you through a table. Are you kidding? You haven't seen the Monster Squad either? All right, guys. Well, this has been fun.
And we're done with the
And
show.
we're done. Yeah, we had a nice not even a quarter episode run. But The Lost Boys opened at number 2 during its opening weekend with a domestic gross of $5.2 million. And then it went on to gross a domestic total of $32.2 against an $8.5 million budget.
That's not bad even for today's standards.
Right.
For horror movies.
Yeah, it made money. The writing credits went to Janice Fisher, James Jeremias, and Jeffrey Boehm. And it was directed by good old Joel Schumacher.
That was one of my first notes. Is it was produced by Richard Donner, who did Superman.
Yeah.
And then directed by Schumacher, who did those shitty Batman movies.
Fuck you, bud. I'm just.
Am I wrong?
No, you are very wrong.
I don't have any.
Hey, I liked Batman Forever.
Sure.
And go.
It's fun.
We're not going to go down this road. Didn't Donner do Goonies also?
I think so.
I think that he might have.
That sounds right.
I think I have something in my notes about that. But back, like, the cast, it had a pretty decent cast. It had Jason Patric, Corey Haim, the Coreys, Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz, Diane Wiest, Edward Herman, which was kind of that dude's a badass. Lost.
Oh, I'm not sure who that is.
Alex Winter, one half of Bill and Ted right there.
Hmm.
And then two guys, Jameson Newlander and Bernard Hughes, guys I've never heard of since. So, I mean, the cast was pretty decent for the movie.
I was looking up the Richard Donner thing.
Yeah, I was looking to
It's
see.
taking longer than it should.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking much longer than it should. Now I'm going to have to talk and stall at the same time because I have no idea what the hell you're doing over there. But the cast, it had a good cast. And I don't know if it's just a bias because it's like a movie that I grew up loving. Yes, Richard Donner directed it.
Okay.
Did you find it?
No, I'm slow on IMDb. I'm terrible.
It's okay. If it was that important, I would have put it in my notes and been like, well, hey, he directed. But yeah, he did the Goonies as well. And I think I have that in my notes somewhere, is that he was trying to go with a Goonies vibe, vampires or something. But,
Well, he definitely succeeded. I mean, it definitely has that kind of feel to it.
Right.
With that very 80s just...
Kids just running around
romp.
going all over the place with no supervision at all. Like,
Oh, yeah. We'll get into that later.
I'm glad to touched on something I'm sure is in your notes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the film is about two brothers who moved to California to a fictional beach town called Santa Carla, and end up fighting a gang of young vampires. The title is a reference to The Lost Boys by J.M. Barrie's stories about Peter Pan and Neverland, who, like vampires, they never grow up. The film was originally set to be directed by Richard Donner, and the screenplay, written by Janice Fisher and James Jeremias, was modeled after Donner's recent hit, The Goonies, in 1985, just 2 years earlier. Yeah. It gets kind of funny, though. In this way, the film was envisioned as a more juvenile vampire adventure with a 13 or 14-year-old vampires, while the Frog Brothers were chubby 8-year-old Cub Scouts.
Oh, jeez.
Close. Right? And the character of Star was a young boy.
Huh.
When Donner committed to other projects, Joel Schumacher was approached to direct the film, so Donner was supposed to do it. But when Schumacher came on, he insisted making the film sexier and more adult.
Well, of course.
Which he did, right?
Get those bat nipples in.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, there's nothing really, like you think about Joel Schumacher. Joel Macher. Joel Macher.
Good old Joel Macher. Joey Max.
Joel Mox there, coming in being like, this movie's not sexy enough, being like...
Bat nipples.
Yeah,
I mean,
bat
just
nipples.
get those in there.
Right, and then... Well, yeah, even Batman wasn't, I guess, putting the old nips on the suit. I guess that was a little Schumacher flair. But when he committed to the other projects, he insisted on making it sexier and more adult, bringing on screenwriter Jeffrey Boehm to retool the script and raise the ages of the characters. And so, by bringing on that one writer for rewrites, completely changed the entire dynamic of that movie. Could you imagine the Frog Brothers just being little chubby 8-year-olds just being like, fucking kill vampires, dude?
They kind of acted like that anyway. It was kind of like they looked like they were like 10 years old and like, hey, let's go kill some vampires.
I told you I don't like horror comics. It just might save your life.
They were so intense.
Yeah. That's one of my notes too, dude. It's
I know.
It's actually a part of my scorecard. We'll get to that later. So the mythographer A. Shibishborn, John. I can't speak whatever language that is. It looks to be somewhere not here, huh?
Something else.
Yeah, something way else. Wrote that the Lost Boys helped shift popular culture direction of the vampires. The film is often credited with bringing a more youthful appeal to the vampire genre by making them sexier and young. That inspires subsequent films like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The scene in which David transforms noodles into worms was directly referenced in the 2014 vampire mockumentary What We Do in the Shadows. Have you seen that?
No.
That is hilarious. Jermaine Clement is the main guy. vampire, and they kind of live in a flat, and it's set up to be like a documentary about just vampires living together.
Huh.
It's on Amazon. It's not super long.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I could pick it to do a topic in the future, but I would recommend watching anyway because it's funny. So, but yeah, that they referenced that, and I don't remember that. I should go back and rewatch it. But okay, so within the last few years, Warner Brothers, those sons of bitches, cashed in on the ever-growing Lost Boys cult with a pair of direct-to-video sequels. In 2008, they came out with Lost Boys: The Tribe, which brought back Corey Feldman as a cameo. They brought back Corey Feldman, and in a cameo, brought back Corey Haim.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then in 2010, they did Lost Boys: The Thirst, which sees Jameson Newlander return as Alan Frog. Neither in which will fail to surprise you are very good. But honestly, if I remember right, I think that I liked The Thirst better than I did The Tribe.
Yeah.
I watched them because they...
Yeah, it's Lost Boys.
Yeah, and...
Gotta support the team.
Right? It's been a long time since those came out, and I don't remember them well, and I doubt that I'll revisit them, especially for this. But, so... This is something that I never knew, but nearly a decade later, or earlier, so late 90s, Joel Schumacher, the old Joel Macher, said that he announced that he had come up with a deal to make a sequel entitled The Lost Girls, which he would produce with a new director being sought at the time. Indeed, Schumacher is on record saying that Sutherland's character David, who we never see explode or dissolve, he just kind of reverts back to babyface, was intended to return in a follow-up, surviving his impaling at the film's conclusion. There's a 2008 comic book called Lost Boys: Reign of Frogs that picks up his story. A script reportedly by original co-writer Jeffrey Boehm has been doing the rounds on the internet for a while, but it reads more like a fan fiction. And so, I mean, that could have been interesting. I mean, they're doing a TV show.
That's what I was saying. I saw something just today about the TV show that they're working on.
Right, and I'd be curious to watch it. The only thing I really know or that I've heard about it is I think what's on CW. I think it's supposed to be somewhere on there, and that they're doing a gender bend and making them the Frog Sisters. That's really the only thing I know about it. But,
fair enough.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much it for what it comes down to with the fun facts and backstory of the movie and what could have been and all this and that. And we will dive right into the movie.
Oh yeah.
Before we get into the notes, what did you think overall?
I enjoyed it. You have to kind of take it with that. It's very 80s, 90s, corny shit, but I mean, a lot of what we're gonna do. I mean, our last episode, Nightmare on Elm Street, same thing. Like,
but that held up really well, though.
Yeah,
I mean, there were some moments, but it wasn't like. What year did that come out? 84?
I think so. I'd have to look
3 years before that. And I mean, I don't know if like the height of the 80s of what you visualize as the 80s was late 80s. I'm not sure. I was 4 when Lost Boys came out.
I was born.
Yeah. Like I wasn't out, living that fucking 80s life, but it was something I was curious, like, yeah, if that was kind of the time, like, because when people talk about the 80s, it's kind of summed up. But I mean, I doubt that from 80 to 89 that it was just nonstop hairspray and neon colors and
pretty close. I mean, I was born in 87, and there's some old pictures of me with some neon clothes. So, I mean, it survived into the 90s at least.
Justin running around in little leopard print fucking pull-up pants.
You know it.
Yeah, I ain't mad at that. But
yeah, I enjoyed it. It's not gonna be my new favorite movie. I didn't grow up with it, so there's zero nostalgia for me.
Right.
Like you have. Would I ever watch it again willingly? Maybe not, but
well, no, and I mean, this is like with Lost Boys, it's one of those things that's like I can't tell you the last time I watched it before watching it recently. but it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, it doesn't really get old for me. Like I could watch it on a somewhat regular basis and be all right with it, but I think it also is because of that nostalgia. Grew up with it, like
Sure.
same with Monster Squad, and some other movies that big part of my childhood that
Fair
maybe
enough.
I wouldn't give a shit as much about if it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
And so yeah, for the movie notes, I just basically wrote down a bunch of
Random shit. So
Yeah.
did I. I went through the whole movie and jotted down things as I thought of it.
I got a chunk, and it's basically like, just kind of starting out, driving into town, Santa Carla, murder capital of the world. I thought that was a pretty rad, spray painted on the back of the billboard there, and definitely that might be aside from the vampire's attire, that scene might be the most 80s.
Where they're setting up all the crazy California adventures.
Right, and all that, like you just see people walking around and they're just highlighting all the people looking like misfits and like the big old mohawks and earrings and
random shots of crazy hair and
right, and then showing off the the badass boardwalk vibe and yeah.
I love when they get to the dad's house and he's just randomly pretending to be dead.
The grandpa. Oh my god, that's like grandpa goals. Like that, he fucking just everything that he does in that movie cracks me up. To the fucking playing dead on the porch, to don't touch my second shelf, to like dude.
His crazy taxidermy room for some reason.
Taxidermy room, the cucaracha tone or whistle or the horn, sorry, on his truck, and
gave me Ant-Man vibes.
just only did it like 40 years earlier.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I didn't quite understand the whole taxidermy thing. Like, it was so present so regularly. I was thinking it was like to ward off vampires, because he like had a new one for him every day when he went to bed.
Maybe
and
it could have just been his hobby.
I guess. I assumed that at the end, but I kept thinking like they're doing this so much, his closet's getting filled with them,
right?
That it's gonna like be a plot point. It was
I
just wacky grandpa pretending to be dead again.
I could see that. Like, it is. What else is he gonna do? Like, before they showed up, you can only pretend to be dead on your porch for so long before you're like, okay, I'm bored. So.
And he doesn't have a TV, so that's.
But I got the TV guide. With the TV guide, you don't need
a
TV,
TV.
right?
I disagree.
Right. But yeah, that's it. That's what I have in my notes. Is Grandpa's hilarious.
I have silly dad pretending to be dead again.
Oh, Dad.
That was the thing. Like the mom, who I've seen in a bunch of other stuff.
She's Diane Weist.
Diane Weist.
Yeah, she's been in.
She's been the mom of like several dozen kids.
Right. Yeah, just an 80s mom.
But like she's she's not concerned or anything. It's just silly dad laying on the porch again, pretending to be dead.
Right. Yeah.
Silly goose.
Silly goose. Yeah, and I don't know if that's how she. Like, I know she's been in a lot, but like if you were to be like, hey, what else has she been in? I'd be like,
As soon as I saw it, I'd be,
Yeah, you could point her out in anything, but like you could unless I look at her IMDb.
I couldn't think of it.
But yeah, she really has this like aloof, like I wouldn't say carefree, but like I don't know how to describe how she is in this movie.
She's very understanding and doesn't really.
Only loses her temper when she gets called at a restaurant during dinner and then gets home and finds out that he's like, oh, it's just a scary comic, Mom. Like,
and it's like, oh, you silly boy. Okay, that's fine.
You know what? I've about had it. Like that's what it took. Well,
it was a good dinner. Like, gotta finish her meal.
Right.
With the vampire guy.
Yeah. But yeah, so it goes from to that, and then they set up David, and I only remember David and Marco. Now I don't know if they ever point out. I mean, they might do it once, but like the names of the other two vampires.
I have no idea.
I couldn't even begin to tell you.
I was amazed I got one.
Right. But they set that up with, the boardwalk scene, like, told you guys not to come around here, and setting them up to be.
Which I do like
bullies.
that makes more sense and is a more interesting scene once you've watched the movie and go, oh, he knows them and turned them, and it's a whole.
Oh, well, yeah.
When you get,
but okay, so
that's later on, but
yeah, that's when they go into the video store. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just.
I didn't mean to screw you
no,
over
that's
there.
fine. I'm trying to look and see. Okay, so I did have that in my notes with the dinner with Max and the vampire test that didn't work out at all. But yeah, with setting up the bully aspect of that, and then leaving, and then coming back later and fucking with, like, just sucking them up, lifting them off the ground and then ripping the top off of that. I don't think it was a convertible, but it became one.
Yeah.
They're just...
It became one very quickly. I felt really bad at the beginning for the security guard because he was just minding his own business.
He's just doing his job.
Like, let him go home, for Christ's sakes. Like,
right?
He had a long day. Probably had to deal with a bunch of numbskull kids.
Yeah, like, they know how they were acting. Imagine dealing with that on a fucking... Oh, man, I couldn't be a security guard on a boardwalk. I'd lose my shit. I'd start punching teenagers and be like, no.
Say no to hairspray.
Right.
Boom.
My job would be over after that. But with that, then they do show Max and I did write down Max and his dog Thorn, but I don't know how long it took for... Did they go into the video store after getting kicked off the boardwalk? Is that how we...
I think so. I'm trying to look through my stuff. And because, I don't see anything.
I forgot to take notes for I just started watching the movie and I totally forgot to take notes for the first
I just
minutes.
have random stuff like when they go to the concert and Mike is just creepily staring at Star.
He's just staring up at. Well, I mean, she was gorgeous.
Well, yeah.
I would have been staring too. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I probably would have been a little more obvious than what he was, because he's like. Kind of looking up at her, then looking
after
forward.
a while, he was. I didn't even notice him looking forward. After a while, he was just staring at her very creepily.
Right.
And I always remember her from Seinfeld. She's the can't spare a square girl.
Oh yes.
As soon as I saw her and heard her voice, it's like, I can't spare it. I can't spare a square.
Oh, I wonder how many times we're gonna see Seinfeld callbacks.
Oh, I hope all the time.
For those that don't know, it's one of your top shows. If not one of them.
One of the several.
Right. I always remembered her from Twister.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Right?
Yeah. Wow. Let's do our Twister episodes so we can talk more Seinfeld.
How funny is that? Diane Wiest is a bigger actress than Jamie Gertz, but we're pulling out. We're like, we don't know what she was in, but we can tell you TV shows and movies that Jamie Gertz was in.
Well, of course. Very recognizable voice.
Right. And then that leading into after the concert where, they end up talking, I guess. And then they're walking off, and then David and the boys show up. And, Star.
I love the overly ominous comic shop is what I have in my notes. They are so... And I like that there was a little Superman nod. Mm-hmm. They had this whole conversation about Superman, which is a cool Dick Donner thing.
They haven't even discovered Red Kryptonite. Yeah, you can't put these with these. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was really cool. It was like, oh, you got these DC guys, working on this movie, and you kind of shoehorn that in.
But did Warner Brothers have DC back in that day?
Oh, yeah.
They did?
They had it by the time they did the first Superman movie.
Okay.
But...
Well, I wouldn't even really consider that shoehorn, though. I mean, that was...
Well, no, shoehorn might be a bit harsh, but I like the way that
we're talking about DC, and you never have anything good to say about that.
We'll talk about the cartoons. We can do that all day and be great.
Right.
I love the comics.
Yeah.
But...
You would never know.
Not on this show.
No.
There's no horror comic book movies. Well...
we can
Blade.
find some. Yeah, well, there's Blade. We can do Blade. we can look into them because I mean we're not just gonna do movies.
Yeah.
We can do movies, games, TV shows, books,
Comics and shit.
You know, I think when it comes to things that aren't necessarily movie based, like you know the last one and this one are, might not be as specific, might do more run specific, just depending on what the topic is.
Sure.
But yeah, that comic book shop is awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It made me very jealous. It was like I remember
do these
the
guys
days.
work here? Do they own it? Like,
Well, that was what was weird. I mean, they acted like they were just. It seemed like they were just random kids there.
just hanging out there, yeah.
But then it was like, oh, they work here, and their parents are these deadbeats who are just constantly passed out in the back in the same pose
Right.
the entire movie.
Our number's on the back. Pray you never have to call us.
I will.
I
'Cause
pray
you're
I never have to call you.
They're, they're not subtle. Nothing about any of this movie
No, and
is subtle.
that's the thing that I have in here in my notes is just how intense that they are when they're giving their advice and like.
Yeah, like well, to me, aside from the comic book thing, until they reveal themselves to be vampires to Mike, you can't even really tell that it's a vampire movie.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, you see the security guard get lifted away, and you know,
You kind of like, and you wouldn't notice it. I don't think the first time you're watching it, but you could maybe kind of get a hint when Star's on the back of Mike's motorcycle or dirt bike, and then David and them, they all come rolling up, and he's no Star, and then he looks at her with his head tilted and kind of does this like mouth twitch, or like you can't really tell if he's like moving. He just does something weird with his mouth, and it's like, that's really subtle.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he does. Like, I don't know if he does like this. Yeah, I'm not an actor, but yeah,
No,
he does. I noticed he did like this little subtle mouth movement where it's like, oh hey, get on my bike or I'm gonna fucking murder this guy in front of you. You know what I mean? Like, don't make me flex on you here. But yeah, that little scene right there when they race the bikes and Mike gets like super pissed off at David and he hops off his bike and he's like, just you, socks him in the head and like
like, I get that he almost made you drive off a cliff.
Right, but you're also being young and dumb, so
And 1 against like 5.
yeah, what?
You're probably not gonna win.
Those odds are not good. You know, those are vampire bikes, dude. You don't have one of those
Yet.
yet.
Give it time.
Right. The next thing that I have going into it would be the super rad hotel underground.
That was a cool hangout.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, the way that he transformed, I have on my notes, strawberry soda plus bejeweled Coke bottle equals vampire.
I forgot your fucking note-taking system. God damn it. He's going to slowly transition into punny notes.
I hope so.
He started out real slow with the last one, and he's going to start ramping.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be fun.
Fucking strawberry soda, bejeweled Coke bottle. Yeah.
It did not strike me as blood, and wouldn't have unless Star said something.
Right. I mean, you by looking at the liquid inside the bottle, you can obviously tell it's not blood.
Yeah.
I get that.
I get that it's red.
Right.
But that's about where the comparisons end.
I get it. But, and then like later on when he comes back and he sees the bottle and he smells it, he's like, oh, now I can smell its blood, and fucking
Yeah, like
throws
you
it.
couldn't taste it or tell immediately.
Like growing up, when he's chugging that bottle, and we kind of did a disservice to that scene by totally jumping over the rice and noodles part of it. But like the cheesy aspect of that, when he chugs it and then it's all in slow motion as he brings it down, he does the lip licking thing. Like as kids, my brothers and sisters and I, that was a thing. Like fucking like
you slow-mo drank.
Yeah, just cheesy shit like that, right? But my brother especially, like he's still probably like I've seen him do that from time to time where he gets a chuckle out of it. But yeah, that whole scene, like conning him into drinking it, because like sitting there with a takeout container of rice, and then he looks down and they're maggots.
Right.
And he's just fucking with them. And the same thing with the noodles, you know. You're eating maggots, Michael. How do they taste? And then, like, the worms and all that shit. And so, like...
Well, and that was the kind of the way that I was able to reconcile the strawberry soda, is that it was like, okay, he's not going to make it seem like he's drinking blood.
that
Otherwise,
could very well be what it was.
I mean, that's probably not true, but that's the way I'm going to rationalize it in my head.
So are you telling me if anybody else other than Warner Brothers made this movie, you would have given him the benefit of the doubt?
No.
It's going all the way back to 87. You're like, I will not give you any credit for any foresight.
Well, because then they made Batman. Anyway.
What? God, I'm going to fucking start throwing shit at you.
Even Tim Burton says that movie's boring. But let's move on.
Yeah.
I think that if there is a rationalization for the strawberry soda, it's that he made him think it was something else, rum or whatever is red.
Right.
And so he couldn't tell it was blood. Otherwise he would, take a sip and go, bleh.
You could, like, if you have a wine bottle, especially a bedazzled wine bottle.
Yeah, it was very pretty.
Yeah. And blood has a distinct scent. Like,
yeah, and consistency.
Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, I would. You got me. Got me going with that one. But with doing that and then going home. Oh well, my note. I'm okay. You guys have to bear with me. This is my first time taking notes for movies, but after doing that, that's when they get back on the bikes and they go, and that's the train
bridge thing.
The train bridge.
Like, they're surprised that he doesn't just, like...
Let go?
Yeah, I mean, like, hang off the tracks in the first place.
Michael.
Oh, that's on my scorecard. don't.
Fuck you. That wasn't that bad. Like,
the ending of it is. It's so very 80s.
Yeah, but, I mean...
I just... It's
that's worse than the Frog Brothers to you? It's
close.
Them chanting Michael?
No, not that part. We'll get
just
to
the
it
hanging from the bridge?
We'll get to it in the scorecard. We'll get to it.
Don't you fucking do this to me.
But it didn't... I don't know. I get the peer pressure and the, do this, but, like, you're hanging off a fucking bridge. Like, you expect me to do this? And then he just does it.
Yeah.
And then they want him to
he held on for a long time.
Well,
He's
yeah.
Like, be one of us, but, like...
Well, and that's what got me and made me start thinking, like, no one said we're vampires yet. Like, maybe if you said that, he would go, okay, like, oh, you're one of us now. One of what?
Yeah.
A douchebag biker? Like, I don't know. You guys have special powers as douchebag bikers?
Do I have to start dressing like you now?
He kind of does.
Yeah, he gets the earring. Like, what's with the earring, dude?
Very 80s.
Right. So with that, ends up at home. He hasn't turned yet.
No.
But then he starts to get the inklings, like, Sam's in the bathtub, and then that gorgeous dog. I love that dog.
Yeah, it's very pretty. And then Grandpa uses Windex as aftershave.
Oh. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, see, the thing is we obviously we took separate notes, and so, like, I don't know where his will go and vice versa. And so, yeah, fucking Grandpa, dude.
Was he going on dates? Was he doing vampire stuff?
No, he was going on dates, man, because he was all like, he I don't remember, old Widow Johnson. I can't talk.
Old Widow?
Old Widow Johnson. But I thought you called her Ol.
Well, probably. Johnson, right? All out there, dang there. With a band check.
Take this down to the old widow, Yeah. Windex aftershave. Totally forgot about it. I didn't even put that in there. That's hilarious. God damn it.
Well, and then the brother realizes he's a vampire, I think, before Mike does. Like, he very quickly is like, you're a vampire, and I'm going to tell Mom, which is something he says.
Which is what happens after... Well, what happens is because Sam's in the bathtub. Nanook's laying on the ground next to him. He's coming up the stairs. Dog senses him.
Yeah.
Michael opens the doors, fucking looking crazy. The dog attacks him. They end up downstairs.
I was afraid he was going to kill the dog.
I'm so glad that the dog didn't die.
I don't know.
And so Sam gets out of the bath, goes downstairs, and then he's like, "What'd you do to my dog, asshole?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he's like, "Oh, you know, he's fine. It's it's my blood. He was protecting you." And then that's when Sam looks and sees his reflection, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like the way you were like starting to explain it sounded like you were about to go down a cheesy road, and I'm like, well, he kind of saw he knew because he's like, I've been reading horror comics and I can see you don't have a fucking reflection. I'm telling Mom.
I just love that it was, I'm telling Mom you're a vampire.
Oh, I'm telling Mom. Yeah, the look on his face like you're in trouble. Like,
you are so grounded for being a
what
vampire.
the fuck is Mom gonna do? That's what I would say. If my brother said that, he's like, I'm telling Mom. I'd be like, fucking do it. See what happens.
With our passive aggressive mom, she's not going to do shit.
Yeah.
Just don't
Like,
disrupt
I've
her during
about had
dinner.
it.
You tell the kids.
Yeah. And so Sam calls the Frog Brothers after that.
Yeah,
He's
and
like-
Mike has his I believe I can fly moment in the bedroom, but then he can't. Then he can't get off the ceiling.
And then that's when he's floating out the window and then ruins the mom's dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And
And she's pissed.
she's beyond pissed because Max seems like a really nice guy.
Well, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super
Until she
sweet.
goes to apologize with flowers and gets ran off by the fucking hounds of hell. Which you don't know that at that point, but
Just a crazy dog. He seemed really nice in the store,
right. He wasn't guarding anybody at that point.
I guess.
But the thing that I thought was funny was Michael goes back to the underground hotel looking for Star, looking
And
for
he
answers,
finds her hard.
and gets sexy time. That's what I put. I was like, I wrote Michael finds Star, ask questions, get sexy.
I put Mike and Star's very 80s sex scene because it's just
It is
that
a
dim
very,
lighting and
very
the
80s.
crossfades. And,
very soft core. Oh yeah.
youth.
I did write Grandpa in his horn because when he went to go on the date and honked it as he comes and goes, because it's like, why not announce your arrival and departure by honking your horn as you come and go?
Ant-Man does it. Why not? You just, that's how you do.
I guess I'm not on that level.
I love when Mike comes home, though, and he's all emo with his shades. And the mom's trying to be really cool about it. She's like,
I thought
hey,
we
are you
used to be
okay? You
friends."
all right? And
I'm having a real hard time, Mom.
I'm dealing with vampire stuff right now. God,
God,
like,
Mom.
just leave me
Get
alone.
off my back about it, Mom. God.
Got my vampire stuff to do.
You know,
Shit.
a 24-year-old looking high school student, supposedly. Like, but let's see, where was I with that? Yeah, I had the sexy time followed by waking up with having the healing powers.
Yeah.
So even though he hasn't killed anybody, which he was supposed to be Star's first kill that
Right.
night, so neither of them killed, but he wakes up. So even though he hasn't killed anybody, he has the Wolverine power
Yeah.
to heal himself, where it's like, hey, I mean, unless you have to fight, like the urge gets stronger with time, like why not just roll with fucking healing powers? You know
I
what
know.
I mean?
That sounds pretty fun. He can fly. He has healing
Yeah, he's
powers.
got everything except for the fucking bloodthirst, like
Yeah.
see if you can keep that at bay. But then you're getting into fucking Twilight territories with
Or Blade. You can do Blade.
well, yeah, you could do Blade, but I mean, they weren't doing an alternative blood source. I mean, they were still bringing in human blood, but with blood banks, which is the more metal way to do it.
Well, sure.
And then being like,
Than Twilight? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think most things are more metal than Twilight.
yeah,
Like My Little Pony's more metal than Twilight.
right. So
I was trying. How did they get to the immediate conclusion that Max was a vampire? I know the Frog Brothers, being as intense as they are, think everybody's a vampire, but I'm trying to remember how they zeroed in on, it must be Max.
well, so they ended up thinking that it was Max with one like different little different things like with with the dog attacking the mom. You know, he's like, oh, that's hounds of hell. Just little things like that. But that's when they set up the dinner to be like, okay, we'll do the classic, vampire test to see,
where they are not subtle at all.
Not at all.
Like,
no, I like garlic, being like, water on the crotchels and fucking like
that destroys most vampires.
It does, but you know what the worst, like the least obvious thing is like turning off the lights, which everybody seems to do with candles in their fingers. Like these kids are all tougher than I ever was, being like, like I'm gonna put out candles with my fingertips. But like having the mirror in front of his face when the light comes back on, it's like like what the fuck are you doing?
That was funny though.
Yeah.
And then we go to the bonfire, which is awesome.
That fucking scene. Now with that, like thinking about, like it was kind of hard doing the scorecard, being like, well, not a lot of people died. Like, I mean, a lot of people died at the bonfire, but you don't know who these people are.
Yeah, they're just randos having a cool, fun beach party.
Fucking jamming out to what was it, Aerosmith? Like, just getting out there, fucking drinking PBRs and doing ska dancing around around a bonfire.
Which is dangerous enough.
Right? But yeah, no, that the bonfire scene, like, I almost wish there would have been more, like, I don't know. I kind of second guessed myself with that. Like, if they would have had more scenes like that with more vampire brutality, it definitely would have been a lot cooler.
Yeah.
But then it wouldn't have been such a horror comedy. It would have definitely.
Well, yeah. I mean,
more weight to the tone.
Yeah, it definitely would have skewed it more into the serious horror genre. Right. Which I wouldn't be complaining about.
I wouldn't be complaining about either, because like, biting into the tops of people's heads and scalping them with their hands, like.
Yeah, that was brutal.
And I really dug the contacts they used for the vampires, like that sunbursty, like it was super cool. And that was one of the I did write in my notes, everybody puts candles out with their fingers. And then how
do you do
it? So yes, then I wrote down after that, Star comes to warn Michael that she was supposed to kill him during sexy time. And that didn't happen. And then that's when I'm trying to think. So when she comes to warn them, is that when they start to fortify the house? Like, I'm sounding like I've never seen the movie before. But
no, I think that's a little later, because my next note is...
she disappears.
Yeah, she disappears, and then they do the attack on the lair.
Right, and they kill Marco. But see, now, the thing about that, like, another thing that I didn't put in my notes and thinking back on was just the whole, like, mind fucks that David would do. Like, when everyone kind of starts to know that everybody knows that, like, they do the whole motorcycles outside the house, and like just all the different mind games.
Which is a little bit later on.
Oh, was that was later on? I didn't even write it down. But yeah, okay. So yeah, the group hits up the cave to kill him. First come, first steak. Fucking classic.
And then they go to their mom afterwards and go, "But Mom, there's vampires. Like, come on, we gotta do shit."
Yeah,
and she's like, "Oh, you crazy kids again.
Get the hell out of here. Go
I'm
home.
selling videos."
Yeah, they
Then they steal the holy water.
Oh yeah, the montage, leading into the
very 80s Home Alone montage.
Yeah, leading into fortifying the house and getting everything ready because they're coming tonight. Like once they stab Marco with a stake, and just the weird muddy looking fucking almost like rusty blood, like the colors that they use for like the blood shooting in this movie, very gross looking. Like,
yeah, definitely.
It almost reminds me of the liquid that I don't remember what saw it was in, but when the judge is strapped to the bottom of the big reservoir and they drop the pigs in, and it's like rotted fucking juice.
Yeah,
it almost looked like that with a
3,
little bit of blood
3 or
tinge
4.
to it, right? But that's what it reminds me of. Is like it
Yeah,
looks
I
like
can
a
see that.
redder version of that.
Yeah, I've got garlic soup in a tub and Home Alone 2 because our last movie was Home Alone 1 because Nancy, Jimmy Riggs and Home Alone's up the house.
That's true, yeah.
So this is Home Alone 2.
So
stuck in New York.
As long as you don't pick the collector for the next movie, we will definitely get away from hopefully get away from the Home Alone vibe.
I don't plan on it with my next one, but I haven't watched it in a while, so
I was gonna say because for those that don't know, and I've told you about this, so what Justin will do when he watches a movie, he has time during the week to watch it whenever he does. My schedule's a little bit different given my occupation, and so what I generally do is I'll watch my movies on say a Friday night, but I will normally stream them through Rabbit. And so I've sent you pictures of the chat rooms and stuff like that. And so once we get going and, more people hopefully will interact with it, you can actually watch movies with us.
Yeah.
And so...
and we'll eventually set up some so we're both there.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is like the rooms and everything are set up. All you have to do is create an account and you'd be in there just like me. Change the name of whatever the room would be called, but there isn't really one person in control of that room. So if I start it, I could click the little remote button and then you could click it and then all of a sudden now you're in control of what happens on the screen and stuff like that. It's not it's a pretty easy thing to, and I'll show you that at some point. It's a lot of fun though, but we did that the other night. We watched, I think we only did 2 movies. We did Lost Boys, and then we watched Scream after that. Yeah. So if you pick Scream for your next movie, I'm gonna fucking roundhouse you. It's a great movie, but I literally just watched it 5 days ago. And so, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and that's not to go off on too many side notes there, but it's something that if you're interested in, at the end of the episode, you'll find out how to get a hold of us. So, if it's something you're interested in, please let us know. And
yeah, definitely.
If we can get enough people in there, we'll find a way to make it a more common occurrence. And instead of maybe just when I do my movies, maybe we both do them. We'll see. Okay, so yeah, you got the holy water leading into the fortifying montage of
Home Alone in the house.
Home Alone in the house. Exactly.
That's just gonna have to be our code phrase for every horror movie that does it, because there's a lot that do it.
Yeah, the Home Aloneing it. Yeah, fortifying the house. My next one that I have is garlic don't work, boys. And then the Nook comes running in and then jump kicks the vampire into the bathtub.
See, and that's what my next note is: does Corey know what he's talking about, or is he just full of it? Because it seems like he's like, "Oh, for vampires, you do this and this and this and this," and none of it works.
And none of it, none of that stuff worked on Max. The garlic, the holy water. I'm assuming he had holy water in his glass
or something.
The reflection, all that. Obviously, there's not a lot of lore to the movie, but just obviously the head vampire is. Which then, if you think about it, is, and this is kind of going off on a different thing here, but is Max even the head vampire then? The movie was supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah, he was certainly the most powerful.
But then think it took him, 30 years? 20 years? It took him 20 years to do a sequel?
Yeah.
And so, which they probably weren't planning on doing anyway. They were, but they weren't.
Well, yeah, it was just, hey, this is popular, let's make more money. And do a direct-to-video.
Right. Oh, good God, yeah. But let's see where we are here. But yeah, it was good to see that. Now, how many vampires? Would have been nice. A little bit of backstory on how they know about the vampires, or how many they've had to deal with. If there could have been a throwaway line saying, dealt with this many or we've killed this
Frog
many.
Brothers.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's so you have to assume they know what the hell they're talking about, because there's no real evidence to suggest otherwise, particularly until the bonfire,
Yeah.
that there's even vampires in the movie. And so it's just, that's why it's such a strange kind of, like, I almost want to watch it again just to see if there's something I missed, because it almost doesn't even seem like a vampire movie.
Yeah,
Until,
it's very limited. Like it's very limited. Like you only see them being vampires at the bonfire and at the house. And that's it.
and
I mean, you hear it. You hear you know, it really fucked with me. Side story. I was walking down. I don't remember what road I was, but I was walking down a road and it's windy. And for those that haven't seen me, I have a luscious beard.
it is nice.
Thank you. So when it gets longer on the sideburns in front of my ears here,
There's a rustling.
yeah, when I'm walking and the wind is blowing at me and it goes through my beard, it literally makes that noise of when the vampires are flying in Lost Boys. That is what I hear in my ears. And I mean, I know it's not real and it's
Do
not
you,
possible.
though?
Yeah,
It could
I do.
be. Kiefer Sutherland is real.
When I first heard that noise, I'm like I didn't know a fucking sound going through my beard or wind going through would make a sound. I'm like, what the hell is that noise? But it literally made whatever that fucking sound is going through my beard, and it was
That's fun.
it was a trip. I didn't put that in my notes, but
Now you know, and you can't unknow. And
Right.
neither can I.
but yeah, the battle scene starts where the vampires they get into the house.
Mm-hmm. You have the bathtub kill machine and the deadly squirt gun.
It's like, growing up, I had those squirt guns, and they're not effective. They're not effective. And I mean, it's like, I don't know I should have looked up to see what year super soakers were invented, but that would have been a lot more practical.
So too. And you could have filled them more. Like those little squirt guns, you get.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a refill.
Yeah.
Give me 30 minutes.
And then, you got garlic in the tub, and like filling those things already takes 23 minutes to fucking get the water inside,
Yeah.
and then hopefully you're not getting little garlic
Cloves.
schmaltzes in there with it. Like, but yeah, that one was pretty cool, which then set off the chain reaction of fucking the blood plumbing, is what I call it.
That was brutal.
Yeah, and that another thing, and here we go again, talking about another scene with blood shooting out of the pipes. Well, yeah, I mean, and call back to last episode when we were talking about It Chapter 2, that's going to boast the bloodiest scene on film. Here's another movie where blood is just...
Guys running out of plumbing.
Yeah. Last one you had the fucking blood geyser. This one you have blood plumbing and like...
You go for, well, I mean, and even Shining, you get the blood elevator. It's like, are they just going to do a blood pool?
Yeah,
And
or
it's
you said
just-
a blood ocean? Oh, dude, a blood ocean would be
Blood
rad.
ocean would be pretty cool.
That would be super cool. So yeah, the bathtub kill machine. Oh god. The next cool one I liked, Death by Stereo.
That's what I wrote.
You wrote Death by Stereo? Yeah. Fuck yeah. I wrote Death. Well, he says it. He goes Death by Stereo.
That must be why.
But the thing that was funny was before that, when he shoots the arrow at him, he's all, "You miss, sucker." Like, do you really talk like that? Like, sucker.
Well, yeah.
It's the 80s, I know, but like,
Everyone talks like that. I did it yesterday.
he's all, you fucking miss, sucker. Like, you are a California kid. You sound like you're from Jersey. Yeah, the Death by Stereo was pretty cool. And then started blasting and more in excess through the radio.
Well,
as he
yeah,
was
that's
dying.
just how that works.
Yeah.
And then you get the David versus Mike Vampire Rumble.
Vampire Rumble. My turn. Oh, yeah.
It was a good fight. I
It
liked
wasn't
it.
bad. Yeah, like, I mean, again, with it being of the time, I'm pretty sure if they, when it comes to like reboots and remaking movies, like I get really nervous about them doing that, just because if like when they're talking about remaking The Crow. They were talking about remaking The Crow, and it's had several different, like Luke Evans was supposed to be him, and then most recently Jason Momoa was supposed to be him.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where I get nervous when they talk about, like, if they ever were to, like, remake this movie. And I mean, they are remaking it into a TV show. But, like, I don't like it because it's like, with that movie, that's what I, like, that's my childhood. That's what I grew up watching. And it's the same thing with The Crow. Like, that's another one of my all-time favorite movies. And even the idea of remaking that, and even though I like Luke Evans or Jason Momoa, like, don't fuck with it. Just leave it. Let it be. Like, just leave it alone. And I know this is a fucking random topic to go off of, but I just started thinking in my mind, I'm like, well, what if they remade this movie? Because I was thinking about
they kind of are.
Well, with the David and Michael fight. And how bad the effects were when they're fighting. Like, I'm like, that would look really cool today.
Yeah, it would.
But that means they'd have to remake it.
Yes, they will.
And I don't want them to remake it. I like leave it how it was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quaintness and a charm to old movies that, yeah, it is nice to see updated versions so that it can look cleaner and sharper and better.
Right, or give like,
I don't even know where to go with that. Other than Brandon, don't ever invite a vampire into your house. Because everybody knows that. You big
classic.
idiot.
That's classic. Well, I'm not, you're the man of the house, and I'm not coming in until you invite me. I'm like, oh, you clever son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things where you look back on it and go, that's actually pretty damn clever. That's a smart way of that story to be like, oh, he made him invite him in.
Yeah.
Therefore making him...
You're invited.
Yeah.
All angsty, like, you're invited.
You're so invited.
Get in here. Get in here.
Crazy son of a bitch.
Right.
But I like that it was like, oh, that's why none of that shit worked, even though it should have. I mean, it's kind of a stupid way of getting around that, but it's
so
also
stupid,
clever.
It's so stupid. It's genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't ever invite a vampire into your home. It renders you powerless. Like, whoever...
And he says it in such a matter-of-fact way, like everybody should know that.
Yeah, like what, you don't have vampires where you're from? You fucking dummy. Like,
you don't invite him in. Yeah, if you think I'm a vampire, don't do that.
That being the reveal of Max being the head vampire, where it's like, they led it on to where that was what had happened.
Yeah.
And then they tried to, kind of throw you off a little bit after that, but then it just ended up being him all along.
And he wanted this whole vampire bunch of his whole vampire family, and the mom sacrifices herself, of course, because these boys will be boys. I'll be a vampire, I guess,
right,
if it makes you happy.
Oh, good God. But yeah, so I'm trying to find, I'm going way back in time here with that, but yeah, so with him being the head vampire and then he's kind of standing there and, they do the profile shot and then they got the lion's head in the background and like he's taking off his glasses and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, the first time I watched it, I'm like, is this motherfucker is he really gonna be a vampire? Like watching it for the first time, like, oh my God, no way. And then he looks at her and then he looks away and then looks back and it's like, oh,
vampire.
Oh.
Well, I liked that they kind of gave you that red herring fake out. He isn't until he really is.
Right.
It added a layer to the story that made it actually interesting.
Yeah, I agreed with that. And the thing that I should have known, that I did know, but I didn't want to say if I didn't know, without knowing for sure. I'm so sorry. Yeah, like what the hell you're talking about?
Did you catch that?
So I was looking up, and it wasn't okay. Because I was looking up, I'm like, well, what the hell has he been in? That
he does kind of look familiar,
right? And because his name is Ed or Edward Herman, and I always get him confused with Fred Gwynn, who played Herman Munster. And then I'm like, I was scrolling through, and I'm all like, okay, so what has he been in that I was trying to remember? And then scrolling through, I saw something on here. Okay, he was in Lost Boys in '87, but he was in well, he was only in one episode of Hitchcock, but he did do something with the Munsters, and that's why I was like, oh shit, okay. You know, he was Herman, but he wasn't. And now I lost it, and I don't care anymore.
Okay. Well, that was a fun trip, Brandon.
You know, I gotta keep it interesting.
Or something like that.
Oh, being a hater.
I gotta give you some shit, otherwise why am I here?
Yeah, why am I here? And so, yeah, Max is the head vampire.
Mm-hmm.
He's, you know, trying to bring Lucy over. He's like, you know, my boys and your boys, and then here
Make a vampire bunch.
Yeah, right. And then you got the Grandpa comes to the rescue, fucking with his sweet rally cry.
Heck yeah. Yeah, in my notes I have the elderly should be allowed to drive ... stakes and vampires.
God damn it. God damn it. I don't like that one. But see, okay, so, you know, Grandpa busts the stakes right through, did he know that there were vampires inside his house?
He knows everything.
But see, the funny thing is like, okay, so when he's like, you know, he walks into the kitchen and then he grabs a root beer off the second shelf, and then he opens it and takes a big chug. He's like, the one thing I never did understand is all the goddamn vampires. And it's like, okay, so you knew that there were vampires. You let your family move there where there are vampires. Yeah. And then you don't tell them that there are vampires.
And then when everyone's acting funny, you don't go, hey, maybe he's a vampire.
Hey, yeah, like...
You're acting quite a bit like a vampire.
Boy over here might be a vampire now.
Yeah.
But then, like...
And then they all laugh like it's just the greatest... oh, it was so
right?
fun.
Then,
what a great fun adventure.
Right. And so it's like, with him busting through the side of his own house...
Yeah.
Like, what gave him the inclination that there were vampires inside that house? Was it all the motorcycles parked outside? Like,
that'd probably be part of it.
Like, what?
That'd probably be part of it.
Was he fucking walking up and looking in through the windows before he
drove? Probably. Well, all his taxidermy made animals. They told him.
Oh my god! But that was the one thing I never understood is like how he knew to just rally right through. I mean, it's a movie and it's the 80s. Like, I get it. But...
Yeah, but also, like, what if you missed?
You missed, sucker. Right? Like...
Oh, God, it's the sequel.
Oh, God.
Like, what if you hit your grandson instead? Or Kiefer?
What if he shot you in the face? Like, yeah, that, good old Grandpa. Like, I know, and the you know what the saddest part is like, that little tirade I just went on with being like, you knew they're vampires and you didn't tell them. Like, that just dawned on me when I was talking about it. Like, that was never my thought process with that movie.
And now it will always be.
And now I'm like, God damn it, Grandpa, you're he was my favorite character. I'm like, you're a fucking dick. Like,
they'll figure it out. Like, at no point is he like, hey maybe watch out for this.
Yeah, tough love of the 80s, you know.
Yeah.
Now they have knee pads for babies crawling and stuff.
That's
like
right.
that.
But in the 80s, it was, let them become vampires. They'll learn. They need to learn not to become vampires.
Shouldn't have done that. All right, that's really all I have for
That's
it.
all I got, too.
You made me sound like I was shitting on the movie, and I love this movie. I hate how you do this.
It's fun to have fun.
It is fun to have fun. So with that, we end it with our Pod and Gore scorecard.
Mm-hmm.
For this one, I had Best Kill or Scare, the classic most Who Wanted to Die and or Live. Mm-hmm. Grossest moment, I have Dumbest Moment, and then I had Best Vampire Death.
Yes.
Is that what you had too?
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen mine, I haven't seen yours.
Yeah, I didn't look through all of what you picked.
Right.
But I just wanted to make sure that we had the same
okay.
shit. And I think from now on, except for that last one of Best Death
I like
of
the
Vampire.
last one being rotational.
Yeah, the last one will be rotational, but the rest of them will be that on the card.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And
good.
But see, and when I get to one of them, it was kind of hard for me to pick. So we'll start out with the best kill or scare. For me, I had the bonfire scene. I just thought that like even by today, like I've seen a lot of, you know,
bloody bonfires.
No, like I've seen a lot of gory death. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like this one still this scene still kind of stands up like that. It almost seems out of place in that movie.
It really does, and I have that as well. I had at first David's peekaboo at the end when he like jumps out of nowhere and is like, "Hey, it's me," because that I didn't, it was dark and he just shows up with crazy Kiefer face, but
right.
Thinking back and after I saw your list, that was the only one that I remembered, and I was like, that really is the coolest scene of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, they're brutal, it's bloody, it
is, and it's
memorable.
Like, it will always stand out, and it's like it was in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, who would have saw that coming? Like, I mean, I believe this movie is classified a horror comedy.
Yeah.
And it has like one of the most brutal,
gory
sequences
vampire
of death.
scenes ever.
So that was my best killer scare.
And that was mine as well.
Theirs as well. Okay, so I'll combo this one. Well, the person that I wanted to die the most, I don't really have one.
I do.
I'm not surprised. Like I didn't have one. Like, I mean, this is also me watching it with like my like
doe eyes.
No, I was gonna say to compare it to you with like my Captain America eyes, where like I see nothing wrong with anything that happens, with anything that goes on, with anything ever. Like there was nobody that I mean, maybe Max at the end, like when he's like turns into a vampire, and I'm like, okay, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
You should die.
You're evil, so go bye-bye.
Right. But there wasn't... I don't know. Like, I could find reasons for anybody. Like, I can even say Michael. Michael's whiny bitch. Fucking...
That's my pick.
That's your pick? Okay.
He was so irritating and stupid and obnoxious, like the entire movie.
See, and I kind of... That's why I was like, well, I could see maybe Michael. But...
Yeah, he did the wrong thing almost at every turn and was so stupid about just about everything. I was like, especially at the beginning. Like, he was all creepy at the concert and... after he turns into the vampire and he's all emo with his mom, and it's just like, grow
a sack, you piece of shit. My most wanted to live was Grandpa. I mean, he was never ever in any danger.
No, because every time anything happened, he just like, fucked off with his Windex.
He fucking dipped out. He's lived there so long, he knows how to deal with them.
Yeah. Mine was the dogs.
You know what? I can see that too. Nanook. It's a gorgeous dog.
Well, even the other dog, the hellhound dog.
Oh, Thorn. That was a gorgeous dog too. Like,
and it was the only character where I actually felt something and was like, even Sam was the other brother. Like, I could see him, getting it, because he was pretty irritating too. But the dogs were innocent.
I'm telling Mom.
You're a vampire. I am so telling on you.
Right.
But the dogs, they're innocent. They didn't do anything. Even Grandpa, for not telling them that they're vampires all over the place.
That was also before he came to that realization too. Animals will almost always be innocent, unless we do Cujo. You know what I mean? Like, and I almost feel like picking Grandpa is like a cheat because of the fact that like,
well, the dogs,
the comedic relief, and even the dogs. Like, I mean, that's a given.
Well, that's the thing. The dogs for me is like, I don't like anyone in this movie, and I kind of want them all to die. Except for the dogs.
Well, yeah.
That's my problem. It was my only saving grace of like. Otherwise, there'd be nobody.
The security guard.
Yeah, okay.
He was just doing his job.
Yeah.
I can relate.
He was almost my pick until I saw the dogs.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
When the movie started, it was going to be security guard, but then I saw the dogs and I went, I'll probably care about them more than security guard.
Yeah. So my grossest moment, I went with the blood plumbing.
Yeah, me too.
You did too. It's just so much of it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's everywhere all the time. That would be so terrible to clean.
Yeah. I mean, even, God damn it, even with it and I keep, for some reason, when it comes to blood, I keep going
thinking
with
a
it.
bit.
But like with Bev in the bathroom blood scene, like thinking about like, yeah, that was a bitch to clean up. Like they show him cleaning up, like, no, thank you. I would. That actually looked like blood. This looked more like fucking rotten
strawberry
pickings.
soda.
I'm not drinking any of those anytime soon. But yeah, it was definitely the blood plumbing. I mean, and that's only because I wasn't going to pick the bonfire twice. Try to have a little bit of diversity in the list unless it like...
Well, and there
absolutely
wasn't really, I mean, like you said, there are very few vampire-y moments. I mean, and there were so few gross out, like, I almost maybe might have picked when they killed the one in the cave.
Yeah, because
it was
that's
just
the same
all...
blood, and it's...
Yeah, and it was all spurting all over the place. That was pretty gross, but it's hard to top the bathroom scene.
Right, and it is. But, I mean, at the same time with that, like, with the kills at the bonfire, like, it does happen so quick, but towards the end when they start to zoom in, where, like, one of the vamps bites into the bald dude's head like it's an apple, and you see blood spurting out, and then you're ripping just the dude's mohawk off, and I'm like, that is gross. like
It's
fuck
pretty
yeah.
gross.
My dumbest moment, I probably would just have to say any of the Frog Brothers dialogue. Like,
That's a fair point.
like, and I mean, I love the Frog Brothers, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Like, but like, it did spawn like one of the, the classic truth, justice, and the American way. Like,
Yeah,
I know
that was
that's not exclusive to that movie, but I'm just talking the level of Frog Bros that
They're
came
so
up.
very serious all the time.
Right.
Mine is the slow-mo bridge fall.
Okay.
That is so awesomely 80s that it's just terrible. And he even does the arm wave of, whoa,
All right.
I'm falling.
David!
And then he wakes up in bed not remembering anything.
Well, yeah,
It's
when he
just-
lets go and he falls through, and then it transitions to him falling into his bed. I'm like, okay, so for my best vampire death, I said the bathtub blood plumbing. So when dude gets knocked into it, and then the skeleton and all that kind of shit, that was a pretty rad or pretty cool. And then I said, although death by stereo was pretty rad.
Yeah, those were my picks too.
Right. I mean, there
Bathroom
wasn't that
one.
many to choose from, but
No, I mean, because the other ones are just fine, or they're too quick, or
well, yeah, David getting impaled,
Yeah.
Max getting impaled,
Yeah,
Marco getting impaled.
yeah, it was just
Like, these are the two that they put a little bit of thought into.
yeah, I was like, oh, these are actually kind of clever and different.
Right.
And the bathroom one wins.
Oh, yeah, the bathroom one was less inaccessy, but it was still pretty cool. But that's what I got for my card.
Me too.
So, I'm
Anything else?
dying. I'm dying. I need it. What is?
I'm surprised you don't remember because I did tell you.
You assume,
We were at the movie together,
you
and
assume
I told you.
listen. God damn it.
You asked. I wasn't even going to tell you.
Oh.
And you asked, and I said, are you sure you want to know? And now you don't even remember.
I don't at all. I'm remembering the conversation, and I can see you standing there telling me, and it's like there's like a fog, and it's like womp 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 womp.
Then I turn into a Peanuts grown up, and
Right.
wah, 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 wah.
I don't.
You don't even have a guess?
Oh my. No, because I'll spend the next 5 minutes of dead air trying to figure it out.
Well, as tempting as that is for me, I don't want to do that to our listeners. My next pick, see, the thing is, go a little explaining, I guess. I didn't want to go franchise again because my first one was Elm Street.
Right.
And when as tempting as a Scream or a Saw is...
Oh, God damn it. Damn it. I'm not remembering it, but I remember my response by me saying I didn't want to do Texas Chainsaw next. God damn it. Or Halloween. I didn't want to do Halloween next.
Yeah. And, Lost Boys isn't... I mean, it's a franchise now, but it seemed a little more obscure. So I went with something that's more of a one-off and, I guess, independent. Midnight Meat Train.
Oh, God, I punched my mic. I didn't mean to. That's right. I do remember that because we did talk about... Oh, God damn it. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I have this movie.
I do, too.
Oh, cool. All right.
It's in my folder of fun.
Oh, your folder of fun? Underneath your badass Game of Thrones poster?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Oh, that's right, because I went off on the Shazam tangent, being like, oh, God, we're in the wrong cave. Okay, I remember now.
Yeah.
God damn it. Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah. That'll be a lot of fun.
All right, so...
Vinnie Jones and Bradley Cooper. It's a Clive Barker.
Oh.
And one that I can actually watch without wanting to rip my hair out.
Yeah, I told him I would, because I actually like Hellraiser, and he's not a fan, and
No.
so
I will watch it again for you
Right.
when I don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many other ones that we could get to that unless somebody, sends us a comment saying you're fucking doing Hellraiser now, then we would do
Bitches.
Hellraiser. Yeah, bitches. Then we would do it. But yeah, unless like you're just being ultra sassy one day and I'm like, you know what, next week we're doing fucking Hellraiser, you asshole.
I could see that happening.
Yeah, I can see it happening too, actually, now that I think about it.
Jotting down your next one for.
Right. And so, all right, Midnight Meat Train.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick update though. So episodes are done and edited. When we're done recording this one, take it home. I'll edit it. It'll be done and ready. My goal is to get it updated or get them uploaded before I get married this weekend, 3 days from now. Might be tricky, but we will be back together in 2 weeks. So once we actually get on the schedule, we will start to incorporate news and more time specific things like we talked about. So then,
but these first couple are pre-recorded.
Yeah, we're pre-recording them. We're having a couple in the tank just to. Like, I was ready to go upload episode 0 and episode 1, and then I was like, okay, so how do I upload this to iTunes and Google Play? And I'm like, what? Like, how?
You do a what? Huh?
Yeah, I'm like RSS feed. What? Like, what the fuck is this? And so, like, my goal is to get them all done and up, and so then that way, because we readjusted our recording schedule because I'll be back in a week. So that we can just keep picking up. But, we'll probably drop 0 and 1 at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
which will be out by the time you're listening to this.
Well, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And so you're not going to hear this right away, but they are coming. Yeah. I promise. And so that's really all I got.
Okay.
What about you? Anything else you want to throw in?
I think... ready to sign off however we want to sign off.
Oh, I don't have any specific sign off, but we can do our social medias live.
Let's do that.
All right. So you can find us. Our Facebook page is live. You search for us. It is Pod and Gore podcast. It might just be Pod and Gore. You'll find us there on Facebook. We are also on Twitter and Instagram. I just got a new phone, so I have to sign into the Instagram again, but we are on Twitter, Instagram, under Gore_pod. Okay. And so, you can find us there, message us, tweet us, all that good stuff.
Any movies you want us to do, hey, you're greats, we'll never tire of this.
You really suck, stop doing this, start doing this, all
constructive
feedback,
criticism is always
helpful. Feedback is always appreciated, good or bad. You can also email us. Our email is podandgore@gmail.com. And we both have access to these through our phones, so I spend a lot of time with my phone.
Fucking around on your phone.
Yeah, so pretty quick with the responses. Yeah. So until next time.
Midnight Meat Train.
Yeah, Midnight Meat Train. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Justin.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.